The Midnight Express didn't derail because of mechanical failure. It derailed because someone wanted her dead. 63 people died because she was running from a scandal she didn't create, because she thought she could escape. She was wrong. This is the story of 3 days in December 1963. 3 days between Paris and Istanbul that would end in fire and ice, and a secret buried for 6 decades. This is the story of a woman the world knew as Vivian Sterling, Hollywood royalty, Academy Award winner, America's sweetheart. And this is the story of the man who knew exactly who she was, who boarded that train with a purpose, who saved her life by ending his own. His name was Daniel Rourke. Until now, no one knew he existed. What you're about to hear will rewrite everything you think you know about the Midnight Express disaster, about Vivian Sterling's mysterious disappearance, and about the love story buried in the wreckage. Because this isn't just about a train crash. It's about love and lies and impossible decisions, about sabotage meant to look like an accident, about 3 days that changed two lives forever. One ended in the mountains. The other has been living in hiding ever since, until now. Because the woman who survived is finally ready to tell the truth before she dies and takes the secret with her. December 15th, 1963. Paris, Gare de l'Est, 11:55 p.m. A woman boards the Midnight Express wearing dark glasses and a scarf pulled tight around brown hair. She keeps her head down, moves quickly through the station, tips the porter enough to ensure he doesn't look too closely at her face, because her face is famous, one of the most recognizable faces in the world. But tonight she's trying to be nobody. Her name is Vivian Sterling, 27 years old, 2 Academy Award nominations, 1 win, star of 7 major motion pictures, married to one of Hollywood's most powerful producers, and as of 3 hours ago missing. No one knows she's on this train, knows she's left Paris, knows she's running. That's exactly how she wants it. What she doesn't know is that someone else is watching, someone who's been following her since she left Zurich, someone who knows exactly where she's going and why, that someone is about to board the same train and set in motion events that will end with 55 people dead and 2 lives forever changed. To understand what happened on the Midnight Express, you need to understand who Vivian Sterling was in December 1963, and more importantly, who she wasn't. The world knew her as Hollywood royalty, born into privilege, educated in Switzerland, discovered at a party in Beverly Hills. That was the story the studios told. None of it was true. Vivian Sterling was born Vera Cook, Manchester, England, 1936. Father was a factory worker. Mother took in laundry. Vera grew up in a 2-room flat that smelled like coal smoke and boiled cabbage. She learned to act because pretending was the only way to survive. Pretend you're not hungry, not cold, not terrified. By 16, Vera Cook could become anyone. She could change her accent, her posture, her entire presence. Walk into a room as a working-class girl from Manchester and walk out as someone who belonged. That's how she got into the London Academy of Dramatic Arts. Pretended to be a diplomat's daughter, forged letters of recommendation, created an entire history that never existed. And it worked. For 2 years, no one questioned her, until a visiting producer from Hollywood saw her perform. Marcus Sterling, 47 years old, powerful, connected, brilliant at recognizing potential. He saw something in Vera Cook, not just talent, hunger, the kind of desperate ambition that could be shaped, molded, controlled. He offered her everything, a contract, a new name, a new life in America. All she had to do was trust him. So she did, and Vera Cook disappeared, replaced by Vivian Sterling, who Marcus claimed was his distant cousin from old money, who he groomed and shaped and eventually married. Not for love, for control. For 5 years, it worked perfectly. Vivian Sterling became exactly who Marcus needed her to be. Beautiful, talented, obedient, the perfect creation, until she stopped being obedient. November 23rd, 1963, the day President Kennedy was assassinated. While America was watching the news from Dallas, someone took a photograph of Vivian Sterling leaving a hotel in Los Angeles with a man who wasn't her husband. Christopher Wade, director, 34 years old. Someone Vivian had been seeing in secret for 6 months. someone she loved, actually loved. Not the performance of love she gave Marcus, but real, terrifying, all-consuming love. The photograph was clear, damning, unmistakable. Someone sent it to Marcus Sterling with a note. Your wife is making a fool of you. What happened next was never made public, but people close to the Sterlings reported shouting from Marcus's office. Glass breaking, Vivian's voice shrill with panic, then silence. 3 days later, Vivian issued a statement through her publicist. She was taking a brief vacation in Switzerland for her health. She'd return after the holidays. Marcus was photographed seeing her off at the airport, smiling, supportive, the devoted husband. But those who looked closely at that photograph noticed something. The way Marcus's hand gripped Vivian's arm, the way her smile didn't reach her eyes, the way she flinched when he leaned in to kiss her cheek. It wasn't a loving goodbye, it was a warning. Vivian Sterling boarded a flight to Zurich on December 10th. She never checked into the spa where she was supposedly staying. Instead, she withdrew $10,000 from a Swiss bank account Marcus didn't know she had, changed her hair from blonde to brown in a hotel bathroom, bought clothes from a second-hand shop, and on December 14th took a train to Paris. She was running. From Marcus, from Hollywood, from the life she'd built on lies. She was running towards something she'd never had freedom. What she didn't know was that Marcus Sterling wasn't the kind of man who let things go. And he'd already made a phone call. December 15th, Paris. Vivian spent one night in a small hotel near Montmartre under the name Eve Hartley. She walked the streets alone for hours. No makeup, no disguise beyond the dark hair. Just another woman in Paris. And for the first time in 5 years, no one recognized her. She had dinner at a cafe, sat by herself, watched couples and families and groups of friends, people living normal lives, people who didn't have to perform, who didn't have to be anyone other than themselves. She wanted that, wanted it so desperately it hurt. At 11:30 p.m., she took a taxi to Gare de l'Est, boarded the Midnight Express. First class, private compartment. Ticket purchased under the name Eve Hartley. Destination, Istanbul. The plan was simple. Get to Istanbul, disappear into a city where no one knew her face. Maybe go to Greece or Egypt or somewhere even further. Somewhere she could start over, become someone new, again. She settled into her compartment. Car 7, cabin 14. Locked the door, closed the curtains, and for the first time in weeks felt safe. That feeling lasted exactly 43 minutes. Until the train pulled out of Paris and a man in third class started making his way forward through the carriages, looking for cabin 14. Daniel Rourke was 32 years old in December 1963. Irish-American, born in Boston, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep him fed. He joined the Army at 18, served in Korea, saw things he'd spend the rest of his life trying to forget. After his discharge, he drifted. Construction work in Berlin, factory work in Munich, whatever paid enough to survive. He was good with his hands, good at fixing things, good at being invisible, which is exactly why Marcus Sterling hired him. Not to fix things, to break them. Marcus had connections everywhere, including a network of men who did work that couldn't be traced back to him. Men who could follow people, gather information, handle problems quietly. Daniel Rourke was one of those men. He'd been following Vivian Sterling since she left Zurich. Watched her arrive in Paris, watched her change her appearance, watched her buy a ticket for the Midnight Express. And he'd bought a ticket for the same train, third class, far enough away that she wouldn't notice him, close enough that he could watch. Marcus's instructions were clear. Follow her to Istanbul, find out who she was meeting, what she was planning, then call back with the information. Marcus would handle the rest. It was supposed to be simple surveillance. Just a job, just another assignment. Daniel had no idea that by the time the train reached the mountains, the assignment would have changed completely. Because Marcus Sterling didn't just want information, he wanted his wife back, or he wanted her dead. And he'd already set the wheels in motion to ensure one of those outcomes. The first night was quiet. Vivian stayed in her compartment, ordered a simple meal brought to her cabin, watched the darkness rush past her window. Tried not to think about what she'd left behind or what was waiting ahead. Daniel Rourke sat in the third-class carriage, playing cards with two German businessmen and a Turkish student, losing deliberately, making conversation, being forgettable, all while keeping mental notes. Vivian had boarded alone, no luggage except a single suitcase. No one met her at the station, no phone calls, no telegrams. She was running solo, which meant she was vulnerable, easy to follow, easy to control. Marcus would be pleased. Daniel told himself that's all this was, a job, a paycheck, nothing personal. He'd followed people before, had seen them at their lowest, desperate, scared, running from things they couldn't escape. It never bothered him. He was good at compartmentalizing, at separating the work from the person. But something about this assignment felt different. Maybe it was the way Vivian had moved through the Paris station, not like a movie star, like a ghost, like someone trying to disappear. Or maybe it was the file Marcus had given him, the one that showed Vivian wasn't who the world thought she was, that she'd built her entire life on lies, just like Daniel had. He understood that, the need to become someone else, to bury who you were beneath who you needed to be. So as he sat in that third-class carriage playing cards and drinking cheap wine, Daniel Rourke made a decision. He was going to follow his orders, watch Vivian Sterling, report back to Marcus, do the job. But he was also going to keep his distance, not get involved, not care, because caring made things complicated. And Daniel had learned a long time ago that complications got people killed. He had no idea how right he was. December the 16th, morning. The train was in the mountains now, somewhere in the Swiss Alps. Vivian woke to pale winter light filtering through her curtains. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back. The escape, the train, the new name. She opened the curtains. The view stole her breath. Snow, endless snow, covering peaks and valleys. The sun rising behind the mountains, turning everything pink and gold. It was the most beautiful thing she'd seen in years. She decided to go to breakfast. Couldn't stay locked in her cabin for 4 days. Had to start being Eve Hartley, whoever that was. She dressed carefully, simple blue dress, cardigan, no jewelry, hair pulled back, minimal makeup. When she looked in the mirror, she saw someone ordinary, unremarkable, invisible, perfect. The dining car was half full. Early risers and business travelers, families, couples, solitary readers. No one looked up as she entered. No one recognized her. The maître d' approached, smiled professionally. She sat down at a small table by the window, ordered coffee and toast, and felt the knot in her chest loosen slightly. She'd done it. She was invisible. For the first time in 5 years, she was just another passenger on a train. That invisibility lasted exactly 11 minutes, until Daniel Rourke walked into the dining car. He shouldn't have been there. The dining car was first class only. Third-class passengers had their own dining area 3 carriages back. But Daniel Rourke had spent 10 francs bribing the porter. His eyes swept the room, passed over the families and couples, landed on Vivian sitting alone by the window. Their eyes met, and something shifted. Vivian saw a stranger, someone who didn't belong. Working-class clothes, worn leather jacket, rough hands, but confident, unafraid. Looking at her like she was just another person. Not a movie star, not someone to be worshipped or consumed. Just another person. Daniel saw the woman he'd been hired to follow. Brown hair instead of blonde, no makeup, simple clothes, but unmistakable. Vivian Sterling, America's sweetheart, trying desperately to be nobody. He should have turned around, should have gone back to third class, stayed invisible, stayed professional. Instead, he walked straight to her table, sat down across from her, and said 6 words that would change both their lives. "This seat taken?" Vivian's first instinct was to say yes, to protect her solitude, to avoid conversation, to stay hidden. But something about the way he asked, casual, not flirtatious, not invasive, just asking, made her pause. When the waiter appeared looking scandalized, she heard herself say, "He's with me." That decision, that single moment of not saying no, would cascade into everything that followed. The conversations, the connection, the love, and eventually the disaster that would kill 55 people. But neither of them knew that yet. In that moment, they were just two people sharing coffee, watching the mountains slide past, pretending to be strangers when the truth was far more complicated. They sat in silence at first. Daniel kept his promise, didn't talk, just drank his coffee and looked out the window. But Vivienne couldn't help stealing glances at him. After several minutes, curiosity won. "You're American," she said. He extended his hand across the table. "Daniel Rourke, Boston, working construction in Munich, traveling to Istanbul for a job." She hesitated, then took his hand. "Eve Hartley, London, traveling alone. Running from something or towards something?" The question landed like a stone. "Both. Neither. I don't know." Daniel nodded like that made perfect sense. "I understand that. I've done my share of running. Turns out you can cross entire continents and still not escape yourself. But the scenery's better." This time Vivienne did smile. Small, genuine. The first real smile she'd given anyone in weeks. And Daniel saw it, saw the way it changed her face, made her look younger, lighter, made her look like someone who wasn't drowning. And he felt something shift in his chest. Empathy, connection, the beginnings of caring. He pushed it down, reminded himself this was a job. She was a target. He was hired help. Nothing personal. But as they sat there talking about nothing important, about the mountains and the coffee, and what it meant to be a stranger everywhere you went, Daniel Rourke started to forget why he was there. And Vivienne Sterling started to remember who she used to be. Before Hollywood, before Marcus, before all the lies. She started to remember Vera, the girl who could be anyone but wanted to be herself. Neither of them knew that 3 carriages back, in the third-class luggage compartment, something was ticking. They talked through breakfast, about nothing important, surface things, safe things. The kind of conversation strangers have when they're both pretending to be someone they're not. They were both performing, both hiding, both pretending the conversation was casual, when the truth was neither of them could stop looking at each other. The dining car filled with late-morning passengers. The maître gave Daniel increasingly pointed looks. Time for him to return to third class. Finally, Daniel stood. "Thank you for letting me crash your table." Vivienne looked up at him. "Thank you for the company. Maybe I'll see you around." "It's a long train." "Probably not." Daniel smiled that easy, confident smile. "We'll see." Vivienne watched him go and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Disappointment. She wanted him to stay, wanted to keep talking, wanted to know more about this stranger who seemed comfortable in his own skin, who didn't want anything from her, who just was. She shook her head. This was exactly what she couldn't do. Couldn't get close to anyone. Couldn't risk being recognized. Couldn't afford complications. She returned to her cabin, locked the door, lay down on the narrow bed, and tried not to think about Daniel Rourke. It didn't work. What Vivienne didn't know was that while she was lying in her cabin, Daniel was 3 carriages back making a phone call. He placed the call at 2:17 p.m. It connected to a number in Los Angeles. Marcus answered on the second ring. "Report." "She's on the train, traveling under the name Eve Hartley. First class, cabin 14. No contact with anyone. She's alone." "Has she noticed you?" "No. I've kept my distance." "Good. Stay on her." Silence on the line. Then Marcus spoke again. "Daniel, if she gives you any indication she's planning to disappear permanently, I need to know immediately." "Why?" "Because I can't let that happen. She's my wife. She belongs to me. And if she thinks she can just walk away..." He didn't finish the sentence. The threat was clear. "What do you want me to do if that happens?" "Stop her, by whatever means necessary." Daniel understood perfectly. Marcus wasn't just tracking Vivienne. He was preparing to eliminate her. If she wouldn't come back, she wouldn't come back alive. And Daniel was supposed to be the one to make sure of it. Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years. Disgust, not at Marcus, at himself. For taking the job, for following her, for pretending to be someone he wasn't. "I understand," he said. "Good. Call me when you reach Vienna. I'll have further instructions." The line went dead. Daniel stood there holding the receiver, staring at nothing. He had a choice to make. Follow Marcus's orders or walk away. The smart thing would be to walk away. But Daniel had never been good at doing the smart thing. So he made a decision. He'd stay on the train, keep watching Vivian, but he wouldn't report everything back to Marcus. He'd keep some things to himself, give himself room to think, to figure out what was really happening, and if Marcus's instructions turned deadly, Daniel would decide then what to do. It was a dangerous game, playing both sides, but Daniel Rourke had survived worse, or so he thought. That evening, Vivian went to the dining car for dinner. She told herself it was because she needed to eat, not because she was hoping to see Daniel again. But when she entered and saw him sitting alone at a table in the corner, her heart did something complicated. Relief, anxiety, anticipation, all at once. He looked up, saw her, smiled, and gestured to the empty seat across from him. Every rational part of her brain said, "Walk away, don't engage, don't risk it, stay hidden." But she was so tired of being alone, so tired of hiding. So she crossed the dining car and sat down. They ate in comfortable silence. Not awkward, just present. Vivian couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten with someone and felt this relaxed. No performance, no calculation. Just two people sharing a meal. It felt dangerous and necessary, like air after drowning. After dinner, Daniel walked her back toward the first-class carriages, stopped at the door that separated their worlds. "Thank you for the company," he said. They stood there, neither moving. The train swayed gently. Snow fell past the windows. "Eve?" "Yes?" "I'm glad you're on this train." Something in Vivian's chest cracked open. "I'm glad you are too." He touched her hand, just briefly, a moment of contact. Then he was gone, back to third class, leaving Vivian standing alone in the corridor, heart racing, hands trembling, feeling more alive than she had in years and absolutely terrified. Because she was falling for him, for this stranger who knew nothing about her, who saw her as Eve. Not Vivian, not Vera. Just her, whoever that was. What she didn't know was that Daniel was falling too. Despite every reason not to, despite the job, despite Marcus, despite everything, he was falling, and it was going to complicate everything. December 17th, morning. The train pulled into Vienna at 9:23 a.m., 2-hour layover. Daniel stood in the communications room, receiver in hand, knowing he should report everything. The conversations, the connection, the way Vivienne was starting to trust him. Marcus would want to know, would want to use it. But when Marcus answered, Daniel found himself lying. "She's still alone. No contact with anyone. I don't think she's meeting anyone in Istanbul. I think she's just running." Silence on the line. Then, "Something's changed. Your voice. You sound different." "Are you getting soft on me, Daniel?" "No, I'm doing my job." "Are you?" "Because I'm paying you to give me information. And right now you're giving me nothing useful." Daniel's jaw tightened. "There's nothing to report. She's just a woman on a train trying to disappear. She's my wife, and she doesn't get to disappear. Do you understand? Because if you can't handle this job, I'll find someone who can, and that someone might not be as gentle in their approach." The threat was clear. If Daniel didn't deliver, Marcus would send someone else. Someone who wouldn't hesitate, someone who would eliminate the problem permanently. "I'll handle it," Daniel said. The line went dead. He just crossed a line, had lied to a client, had compromised his professional integrity for a woman he barely knew. It was foolish, dangerous, potentially fatal, but he couldn't help it, because somewhere between Paris and Vienna, this had stopped being a job. Vivian disembarked in Vienna. She told herself it was safe, that Vienna was far enough from Hollywood that no one would recognize her. She found a small cafe, sat by the window, ordered coffee, and watched people pass. Normal people living normal lives. For a moment, she let herself imagine it. What if she stayed here, got off the train, and disappeared into Vienna? It was tempting, but she knew it wouldn't work. Vienna was too close to Paris, too easy for Marcus to find her. She needed more distance. She was paying for her coffee when she saw him. Daniel, across the street, standing in a doorway, talking on a payphone. His back was to her, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept looking around, like he was worried about being seen or followed. Vivian felt that unease return, stronger this time. Who was he talking to, and why did it look so clandestine? Her instincts were screaming. Something was wrong. She left the cafe, walked quickly back toward the station, didn't look back. By the time she reached the train, her hands were shaking, and she'd made a decision. No more conversations with Daniel Rourke. No more dinners. No more letting her guard down. She'd stay in her cabin, avoid him, get to Istanbul, disappear. That was the plan. The train left Vienna at 11:47 a.m. Vivienne locked herself in her cabin, drew the curtains, told the attendant she wasn't feeling well and didn't want to be disturbed. But at 6:15 p.m., there was a knock on her door. "Madame, you have a visitor, a Mr. Rourke?" Daniel. Every instinct said, don't let him in. But the look in his eyes, something was wrong, really wrong. She stepped aside, let him enter, closed the door behind him. "What's going on?" she asked. Daniel took a breath. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth about who you really are." Vivian felt the floor drop out. "I told you, my name is Eve Hartley." "Stop. I know you're lying. I've known since Paris. The question is why?" Vivian's mind raced. How did he know? Was he working for Marcus? "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. And we don't have time for this. Something's happening on this train. Something bad. There's a man on this train, third class. He boarded in Vienna. He's been asking questions about a woman traveling alone. First class, brown hair, English. He's not a passenger. He's carrying a gun. And he's looking for someone." "How do you know this?" Daniel turned to face her. "Because I'm not who I said I am either. Someone who was hired to follow you, to report back to your husband." The words hit like bullets. Vivian stepped back, hit the wall of the cabin. "Marcus sent you." "Yes." "You've been watching me this whole time." "Yes." "The breakfast, the conversations, all of it was—" "At first, yes, but then it became something else." Vivian laughed, sharp, bitter. "Something else, of course. Let me guess. You fell for me? Is that the story?" Daniel didn't answer, just looked at her with those steady gray eyes. And Vivian realized he wasn't lying. "You work for Marcus." "I did. I'm not sure I do anymore." "Why not?" "Because the man who boarded in Vienna? He's not here to watch you. He's here to kill you. And I think Marcus sent him because he doesn't trust me anymore." The cabin felt too small. Vivian couldn't breathe. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because if I'm right, we have about 12 hours before he makes his move. And we need to be ready." Vivian stared at this man she'd started to trust. This man who'd lied to her, who'd been hired to betray her, who was now claiming he wanted to save her. "How do I know this isn't another lie?" Daniel reached into his jacket, pulled out something, handed it to her. A photograph of Vivian, taken in Paris, leaving her hotel. The back had a handwritten note. "Confirm target identity. Await further instructions. MS. Marcus, you've been following me since Paris." "Yes. Why tell me now?" "Because I can't do this anymore. And because I meant what I said last night. I'm glad you're on this train, and I don't want you to die." Vivian felt tears sting her eyes. "What happens now?" "Now we figure out how to survive the next 12 hours. Together." And despite everything, despite the lies and the betrayal and the impossibility of it all, Vivian believed him. Or maybe she just didn't have a choice, because Marcus had found her, and the only person who could help her was the man he'd sent to destroy her. They sat in Vivian's cabin for hours making a plan. Daniel explained everything, how Marcus had hired him, what his instructions had been, how they'd changed from surveillance to something darker. How the man who boarded in Vienna was named Anton Cross, a fixer, a cleaner, someone who made problems disappear permanently. Marcus must have sensed I wasn't reporting everything, so he sent backup, someone who wouldn't hesitate. Why not just pull you off the job? Because he doesn't trust me anymore, which means I'm a liability too. Once Cross handles you, I'm probably next. Vivian absorbed this. So, we're both targets now. Looks that way. And you're telling me this because I'd rather die fighting than die following orders. It was the most honest thing he'd said. Vivian believed him. What's the plan? Daniel spread a map on the small table. We're here, somewhere between Vienna and Budapest. The train crosses through the Carpathian Mountains tonight. Remote area. Lots of tunnels, lots of places where an accident could happen. I think he'll make his move in the mountains. So what do? We get off before he can act. There's a small station, Bran. We stop there for 10 minutes around 9 p.m. We disembark, disappear into the countryside. Vivian looked at the map, at the tiny station in the middle of nowhere, at the mountains surrounding it. And if we get off, Marcus will know we're together. He'll send more people. Yes. So we'll be running forever. Probably. Vivian was quiet for a long time. Then, why are you doing this? Helping me? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. You could just walk away. Let Cross handle it. Save yourself. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her. I could, but I won't. Because somewhere between Paris and here, I stopped seeing you as a job and started seeing you as a person who deserves better than what Marcus Sterling is planning for you. That's not a good enough reason to throw your life away. Maybe not, but it's my life, and I get to decide what's worth throwing it away for. Vivian felt something crack open in her chest. This stranger, this liar, this man who'd been sent to destroy her, was the first person in years who'd chosen her. Not Vivian Sterling, the movie star, not Vera Cook, the fraud. Just her. Okay, she said. We get off at Bran. We run, together. Daniel smiled, small, genuine. Together. They spent the next 2 hours preparing, packing light, taking only essentials, money, documents, warm clothes. Daniel had a gun. At 8:45 p.m., they were ready, 15 minutes until the Bran stop. Daniel went to check the corridor, make sure Cross wasn't watching. Vivian stood at the window, watching the mountains, dark, endless, terrifying. They were about to jump into the unknown. Together. Two strangers who'd lied to each other, who barely knew each other, who were about to risk everything on a plan that probably wouldn't work. It was insane, but Vivian felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Daniel returned. Coast is clear. Cross is in the dining car. We have maybe 10 minutes once we stop. I'm ready. Vivian. It was the first time he'd used her real name. She looked at him. Whatever happens next, thank you for trusting me. Don't thank me yet. We haven't survived. We will. At 8:58 p.m., the train began to slow. They could see the lights of Bran Station ahead. Small, remote, perfect. Daniel took her hand. Ready? Ready. The train pulled into the station, stopped. 10-minute layover. They moved toward the door, luggage in hand, hearts racing. This was it. Freedom or death. They stepped onto the platform. Cold mountain air hit them. Snow was falling, heavy, blinding. Perfect cover. They started walking toward the station building, toward the exit, toward escape. They made it 30 feet. Then a voice behind them. Going somewhere, Mr. Rourke? Anton Cross, standing in the train doorway, gun in hand, smiling. Time slowed. Daniel pushed Vivian behind him, put himself between her and the gun. Cross stepped onto the platform, casual, unhurried. Mr. Sterling said you might get cold feet. He was right. Walk away, Cross, Daniel said. His voice was steady, but Vivian could feel him trembling. You know I can't do that. Then you know I can't let you do this. Cross laughed. You're going to stop me? You? A washed-up construction worker playing hero? Marcus told me you were soft. I didn't believe him. But here you are, protecting a woman who doesn't even know your real name. Cross raised the gun. There won't be a later. What happened next happened fast. Too fast for Vivian to process. Daniel moved, lunged toward Cross. The gun fired. The sound was deafening. Vivian screamed. People on the platform scattered. Shouts. Chaos. Daniel and Cross struggled. Two bodies locked together, fighting for the gun. Another shot, this one wild, hitting nothing. The train whistle blew. 1 minute until departure. Vivian stood frozen, watching Daniel fight, watching him lose. Because Cross was bigger, stronger, trained, and Daniel was just a man who'd made a choice. The gun skittered across the platform. Vivian saw it, ran for it, grabbed it with shaking hands. "Stop!" Her voice cut through the chaos. Both men froze, looked at her. Vivian was holding the gun, pointed at Cross, hands trembling so badly she could barely keep it steady. "Let him go," she said. Cross smiled. "You won't shoot." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do. You're an actress, not a killer. Put the gun down before you hurt yourself." The train whistle blew again. 30 seconds. Cross was calculating, looking between Vivian and Daniel, weighing his options. Then he made his decision. Released Daniel, stepped back, raised his hands. "Fine. You win. For now." Daniel scrambled to his feet, moved toward Vivian, took the gun from her shaking hands. "Get on the train," Cross said. "What?" "You heard me. Get back on the train. Run if you want, but you won't make it far. Marcus Sterling owns half of Europe. He'll find you, and when he does, it won't be a bullet. It'll be something much worse." The train started moving, slowly at first, then faster. Daniel grabbed Vivian's hand. "Come on." They ran alongside the accelerating train, grabbed the handrail, pulled themselves aboard just as the train cleared the platform. They collapsed in the corridor, breathing hard, hearts hammering. Behind them, through the window, they could see Cross standing on the platform, watching them go. Not chasing, just watching. Like he knew something they didn't. Daniel and Vivian sat on the corridor floor, still breathing hard, still processing. "We should have run," Vivian said. "We tried." "We should have tried harder." Daniel looked at her. "He let us go." "What?" "Cross. He could have shot us, could have dragged us off that train, but he let us go." "Why?" Vivian felt cold realization settle. "Because he doesn't need to chase us. Because whatever Marcus has planned, it's happening on this train. That's why Cross let us get back on. Because we're exactly where he wants us." Daniel's face went pale. "The mountains. You said the train crosses the Carpathians tonight. Lots of tunnels, isolated areas. So that's where you'd sabotage a train, make it look like an accident, brake failure, derailment." Vivian stared at him. "You think Marcus is going to crash the train?" "I think that's exactly what he's going to do. Kill you, kill me, kill everyone on board, and make it look like a tragic accident. That's insane. He'd kill dozens of innocent people. He's killed for less." The train rattled deeper into the mountains. Vivian looked out the window at the darkness, at the drop-offs barely visible in the moonlight. "How long do we have?" "I don't know. Hours, maybe. We need to find the bomb, or the sabotage, whatever he's planted. And then what?" "Then we stop it, or we die trying." Vivian looked at this man, this stranger who'd lied to her, who'd betrayed her, who was now trying to save her. "What's your real name?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. Then, "Daniel Rourke." That part was true. The rest, the job, the construction, that was the lie. "I'm a fixer, like Cross. I did jobs for people who needed things handled quietly. And you took a job to follow me." "Yes. And now?" "Now I'm trying to keep both of us alive." Vivian nodded. "Okay, Daniel Rourke, let's go save a train." They had 3 hours, maybe less. The train was climbing into the highest part of the Carpathian Pass, the most dangerous section. Steep grades, sharp curves, tunnels blasted through solid rock. If someone wanted to stage an accident, this was where they'd do it. Daniel and Vivian moved through the train systematically, starting in third class, looking for any unusual luggage that didn't belong, passengers who seemed nervous, anything that suggested sabotage. They found nothing. The dining car, the observation lounge, the sleeping carriages, nothing. "Maybe we're wrong," Vivian said. They were standing in the corridor near the engine car, past midnight now, most passengers asleep. "Maybe Marcus isn't planning anything. Maybe Cross was just there to scare us." Daniel shook his head. "Cross doesn't do scare tactics. He eliminates problems. And the fact that he let us go—" He stopped, went very still. "What?" Vivian asked. "The luggage car. We didn't check the luggage car." They moved quickly through the train, past sleeping passengers, past locked compartments, to the rear of the train where the luggage was stored. The door was locked. Daniel forced it open. Inside, the car was dark, stacked with trunks and suitcases, the smell of leather and dust. Daniel switched on a flashlight, started searching, moving between the stacks, looking for something that didn't belong. And then he found it, hidden behind a large steamer trunk, a metal case, new, clean, out of place. Vivienne! She came over, looked at what he'd found. Is that a bomb? Yes. It was crude but effective. Timer mechanism. Enough explosive to blow through the coupling between carriages. Set to detonate at 2:47 a.m. Exactly when they'd be crossing the highest bridge in the pass, 700 feet above a frozen river. If the rear carriages separated and derailed, everyone in them would die. Vivienne felt sick. Can you disarm it? Daniel examined it carefully. I don't know. I'm not a demolitions expert. What do we do? Daniel checked his watch. 2:19 a.m., 28 minutes. We throw it off the train. What if it explodes when it hits the ground? Then at least it's not on the train. They lifted the case together, heavy, awkward, carried it toward the rear door, but as they reached it, the door opened. Anton Cross stood there, gun raised, smiling. I knew you'd figure it out eventually. Step away from the case. Time froze. Daniel and Vivienne stood there holding the bomb, Cross blocking the only exit. You're not going to shoot, Daniel said. You'll hit the bomb. Kill everyone, including yourself. Cross's smile widened. You're probably right. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to put that case down, you're going to walk back into the passenger cars, and at 2:47, you're going to die with everyone else in the rear section. Why? Vivienne asked, her voice shaking. Why kill all these people? They're innocent. Collateral damage. Marcus wants you dead, wants it to look like an accident. This accomplishes both. Plus, it sends a message to anyone else who thinks they can run from him. You're insane. I'm employed. There's a difference. Cross gestured with the gun. Put it down, now. Daniel looked at Vivienne. Something passed between them. Understanding, agreement, a decision made without words. Okay, Daniel said. He started to lower the case, then threw it directly at Cross. Cross dove sideways. The gun fired. The bullet hit the ceiling. Daniel tackled him. They went down hard. The gun skittered across the floor. Go! Daniel shouted at Vivienne. Get the case off the train. Vivienne grabbed it, ran for the rear door, but it was locked from the outside. She pulled, kicked. Nothing. Behind her, Daniel and Cross fought. Brutal, desperate. Cross was winning. Stronger, better trained. He got Daniel in a chokehold, started squeezing. Daniel's face turned red, then purple. Vivienne looked at the case, at the timer. 2:44 a.m., 3 minutes. She couldn't open the door, couldn't throw it off, couldn't disarm it. She looked at Cross, at Daniel dying in his grip, made a decision. She grabbed the gun from the floor, pointed it at Cross. Let him go. Cross laughed even while choking Daniel. We already did this. You won't shoot. You're right, Vivienne said, and she pulled the trigger. Not at Cross, at the window. The glass exploded. Wind and snow rushed in. The sudden change startled Cross. His grip loosened. Daniel broke free, gasping. Vivienne grabbed the case, ran to the broken window, started to throw it through. But Cross recovered, lunged at her, grabbed the case. They struggled, Vivienne, Cross, the bomb between them. 2:45 a.m., 2 minutes. Daniel got to his feet, saw what was happening, ran toward them. Vivienne, let go! But she couldn't. If she let go, Cross would put it back, reset the timer, kill everyone. The train entered a tunnel. Darkness swallowed them. Only the dim emergency lights, the roar of the tunnel echoing. In the chaos and darkness, Daniel made his choice. He grabbed the case, ripped it from both of them, and threw himself out the broken window. With the bomb. Daniel! Vivienne's scream was swallowed by the tunnel. She lunged for him. Too late. He was gone. Disappeared into the darkness, into the abyss below. The train burst out of the tunnel onto the bridge, 700 feet above the frozen river. Vivian stood at the broken window, staring into the darkness, searching for him. And then an explosion. Far below. A flash of light against the snow. Then nothing. Silence. Daniel was gone. The train didn't derail, didn't crash, continued through the mountains oblivious to what had just happened. To the man who'd died saving them? Vivian stood at the broken window in shock. Couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't process. Cross was on the floor unconscious, hit his head when Daniel took the bomb. The conductor found them 20 minutes later. Found Vivian standing there. Found Cross bleeding. Found the broken window. The questions started immediately. What happened? Who was she? What was that explosion? Vivian told them a version of the truth. There was a man, he tried to rob her. Another passenger intervened. There was a struggle. The window broke. The man fell. She didn't mention the bomb, didn't mention Marcus, didn't mention Daniel's real purpose, just said he was a passenger who'd helped her. A hero. They searched for his body when the train reached the next station. Searched the ravine where he'd fallen. Found nothing. The explosion, the fall, the frozen river. There was nothing to find. Daniel Rourke had disappeared, like he'd never existed. Cross was arrested, held for questioning, but 3 days later he disappeared from police custody. Marcus's reach extended everywhere. The incident was classified as an attempted robbery gone wrong, tragic but contained. No mention of sabotage, no mention of conspiracy, just another violent crime on a train. Vivian was free to continue to Istanbul, but she didn't. She got off in Budapest, disappeared into the city, changed her name again, became someone new. Not Vivian Sterling, not Vera Cook, not Eve Hartley, someone else entirely. Someone who died and been reborn on a train in the mountains. Some love stories end in happily ever after. Some end in tragedy. This one ended in truth. The truth that love isn't measured in years. It's measured in choices, in moments, in the willingness to sacrifice everything for someone you barely know. Daniel Rourke loved Vivian Sterling for 3 days and died for her on the 4th. She loved him for 62 years and lived for him until the end. If this story moved you, please share, like, and subscribe. See you in the next story.